Welcome to Surrender School.
This is the Essential Enneagram Empowered 12-Step Workshop. This session is about making friends with our dark side, the levels and shadows. So the levels of development in shadows. The goal of this is a personal journey. It is not intended to teach you the Enneagram as in, okay, now I know the Enneagram. It's not intended to do that. You obviously are picking up some things and hopefully are very curious about the Enneagram. But the goal is to help you recognize the wonderful person that you are so that you can relax into your true self, where the God of your understanding resides or at least touches you. How we do this is to recognize the unseen forces that drive our behaviors, which are the passions, which we in program call defects. Some people call them defenses, and the fixations or the stories that we tell ourselves. The way that we do that is by catching ourselves in the act of doing things that the ego causes us to act, when the ego causes us to act out our persistent defects. And then to gently remind ourselves to return to our true and shining self. Okay. Some things to keep in mind. I'm not an expert on anything. I may be an expert on explaining things that are complex in a simple way, but that's about the only thing I'm an expert on. I'm not an expert on the Enneagram, although some people seem to think I am. I am not. There are a lot of people out there that are, and I am a student of theirs. So and passing along the information, which I'm really enjoying doing, by the way. Recovery is a process, not an event, and in my opinion, is a lifelong process. Self-contempt stops spiritual growth. I've talked about that many times. It's as if as if my higher power says you can grow spiritually or you can hate yourself. You can't do both. So you pick and I'll wait. And I'm picking spiritual growth. I have kept the homework to a minimum, although it's a lot of information. So a lot of people, I think, are going back and looking at the video again and that kind of stuff, which is great. And then I always ask you to focus on your own type for now, but inevitably, you'll take a look at other things. There are a couple of new items that I want to point out. The first is I've added evening office hours, or maybe afternoon for Pacific time, Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific. So there are now 3 office hours, Tuesday 8 a.m., Wednesday 8 a.m., and Wednesday 5 p.m. And beginning July 7th or somewhere around there, 4 weeks per type, starting with type 8. It's the same information, so I'm just going to take the same slides, except put all the 8 stuff together, all the 9 stuff together, and so forth as we go through this. There'll be time for sharing and for questions, so it's very more specific than office hours, and it'll last probably, I think, into February is when we're finished, or February and March, something like that. So anyway, and even though it's 4 weeks, there's some like we skip Christmas and that kind of stuff. So anyway, you get it. Just want to kind of give you a heads up if that's something you're interested in. And I'm perfectly fine if somebody wants to go through all of them and learn all the types, that would be great. Or if you just want to come for your own, that would be great too. All right, still date and time to be determined. Okay, so we're going to do some, I'm going to stop sharing here in a minute. We're going to do some shares. So raise your Zoom hand. And once again, on the assignment, which a lot of it was journaling. And by the way, I do want to let you know, I give these assignments so that if you feel like they would help you, that you do them and challenge yourself, but there's no judgment whatsoever if you don't. This is a lot of information and the challenges are intended to be difficult. So this isn't like, oh, I'm just going to sit down and, watch a movie. It's not like that. And I understand that. And all of us, Linda, Joy, all of the board completely understands that some of these are just, even the ones sometimes as an 8, I'll try it and go, yeah, I can't do that. It's a challenge. It's too big of a challenge. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to stop sharing, and if you'll raise your hand. So this week we are talking about step 8, made a list of all people we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. So I'm going to spend a little time talking about step 8. So first of all, I want to say, you have a list from step 4. And sometimes people will disconnect these two, but that's one of the reasons you don't want 150,000 names on step 4, because eventually you're going to have to do step 8 and 9. So 10 people, maybe 20, right? People, situations, whatever, that your resentment list, right? So you want, and from that list is where you come up with, and one thing I want to caution everybody, and you've probably been through this or seen this happen, Before you make amends to anyone, you talk to your sponsor or a trusted person to find out, do you really owe amends and is this appropriate? Because once again, when we get to step 9, you want to own things, but sometimes it isn't appropriate because you might harm that person or harm other people. You can harm yourself, that's fine, but you can't harm other people, right? So anyway, so you have the list from step 4. So if you do step 4 where you blasted through, you've got your list of 10. Now you've got the list, you talk to your sponsor or a trusted person and say, okay, in this case, do I owe an amends? In this case, do I owe an amends, right? 8s often owe amends, and I almost always owed amends for getting in someone's face. Okay, now let's talk for a second about the term wanting. You notice it says became willing to make amends. Wanting looks like this. Oh, I can't wait. I want to do that. No one wants to do that with the step 9. That is not my dog. Sorry. Mayhem. Stop. He's anyway making noise. All right. So wanting is like excited to do it. Nobody is excited to do this, but a willingness, what willingness is, willingness, the definition for willingness is cheerfully consenting or ungrudgingly complying. It does not look like this little boy. This little boy does not. So if you are trying to do step 9 and you have the look like the little boy has in your face, you need to like go back and work a little bit more on your willingness. Now, you don't need to look like this little guy where you're thrilled to do this. You don't need to look like that because that would be wanting. You don't have to do that. But the idea that I cheerfully consent, I just go, okay, I need to do this, or ungrudgingly comply. Okay, I need to do this. You'll look more like this guy. Now, what I want to talk about is, okay, how do I get to the point where I'm going to look like this guy, where okay, I need to do this, right? And this is how you do it. So Linda, if you would read at the bottom of page 83 in the big book, the step 9 promises.
All right.
There you go.
If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves.
So that, what Linda just read, is why you become willing. Because doesn't that sound awesome? Those are the step 9 promises. The step 10 promises says, and we stop fighting everything. We don't fight anything anymore, right? It's peace and it's love and it's wonderful. And so that is why we become willing. We don't become willing by just saying, okay, I'm willing. No, you look at something in the future, which is that life is what you get if you will make these amends, and then you become willing. And that means cheerfully consenting to do this. Doesn't mean thrilled, but I'm going to do it. And ungrudgingly complying to this step. That's what that means. I've known a lot of people that they're waiting to become like delighted with this. No one's delighted with this ever. Nobody's delighted to do this, to do step 9, right? But you're willing to make the amends and then you commence doing that. That's kind of the goal of all this. Okay. 3 readings that I'm going to suggest if you're stuck on willingness. The first is the big book, page 417, which is Acceptance is the Answer to All My Problems Today. Basically, the acceptance of what my life looks like, the acceptance that there is such a thing as peace, the acceptance that there is a higher power, the acceptance of the way life on life's terms is what Ellen Berger calls it. And then to read Ellen Berger's book, Emotional Sobriety. I can't tell you how much that changed my life. And there is a study. Now, he does actual sessions and that kind of stuff on Friendly Circle Berlin, if you want to go out there. But Linda T. Also did a study for Surrender School on Ellen Berger's Emotional Sobriety from the perspective of a compulsive eater. And it's just an awesome class. So it's out there under the same place where you find the Triple E stuff. Just above that, you'll find the emotional sobriety. I think it's there. I might be wrong. No, it's there. It's under the book studies. Okay. And then finally on the big book, page 552, and what this is if you want to be free of resentment, and I'll tell you a quick story here. I had a boss that I worked for that I can't, I mean, I actively hated him. And I don't hate very many people, but I just really, really, really hated him. And I was like beside myself with all this emotion and all this crap. And my poor bosses, the owners of the company were thinking, what does the matter with you? And it was bad. And so I went to my sponsor and said, I can't live like this. This is terrible. So she basically pointed me to 552 and basically said, okay, for 30 days, every day, you are going to pray that this man gets all the wonderful things that you want in your life, because more than likely he wants the same thing. And what I learned when I did that, and I had to do it for a full month, but what I learned when I did that is that I can't pray for someone to get all kinds of good things and still hate them, right? I can't do both. And I had decided that I was going to do what she asked me to do, which eights aren't very good at doing that, but I decided I needed to, so I did. And what I found, he and I became friends, or at least friendly. I mean, and I don't hate him anymore at all. I really feel no emotion for him at all. I mean, he's fine. I like him. He's fine. But what I'm going to give a little addition to this. So one of my bosses there had seen my meltdown about this and saw the aftermath where he and I became friends, or friendly at least. And he came up to me and said, how did that happen? Because, people don't change that much. And I explained to him what I'd done. And he, as a result of that, because he had someone in his family that was an addict, he went to Al-Anon. And he has been an Al-Anon member ever since then. And that's, almost 20 years ago, or 15 anyway. And I just, that story is so compelling to me because people see, we don't have to talk about it even, right? People see the change in our behavior when these things are happening in us. That is what recovery looks like. Even if we can't see it, at least to you, even if we can't see it, other people can, right? Even if we can't feel like we can't call ourselves recovered, other people see it because we're growing and changing, right? Our higher power is changing us. It's a wonderful thing. Okay. I want to take just a minute to talk about why might step 8 be difficult for my type. For the ones, willing to admit that I've been wrong. Let me just do better in the future. I promise I'll just do better in the future. They really would prefer not to admit that they're wrong. I can understand that. But anyway, so that might be what's hard for the 1. For the 2, willing to admit that I might be selfish, right? 2s have a real trouble because selfish is like the worst possible thing because they're generous and kind and giving. And so selfish sounds like the worst sin of all. And they don't want to have to admit that they are. Okay. For 3, willing to admit that my persona, that outward persona, doesn't match who I really am as a person. And it might hurt their reputation, and reputation is really important for a 3. Okay. For the 4, there is no way that they suffered more than I did. It's so hard to see that they didn't deserve what I dished out. So sometimes the 4 can really dish some stuff out, especially the sexual 4. And they're just like, no, they're the ones that did it wrong, right? And so they get stuck in that. And once again, a really good step 4 will help with that for sure. And then probably the last, which in some inventories is the 5th, and some it's the 6th column. And that is, what would God have me be? Right? He would have you be forgiving, more than likely. Okay, for the 5, they're usually a very private person, so it's difficult to share their feelings, even if I feel them, and very often they'll even disengage from the feelings. And for the 6, what if this person walks away? What if they deny future support? Because the 6, once again, their basic fear is that they will be that they can't live without the support of other people. I mean, none of us can, but I mean, they're very afraid that they can't make it on their own. So that is certainly tied to that. For the 7, they probably didn't even notice that whatever it is that I did, they probably didn't even notice, so why bring it up? Right, that typical kind of avoidance thing, because 7s don't like unpleasantness, obviously. Okay. For the 8, willing to admit that I'm vulnerable. Yeah, that's really hard. And then for the 9, I might be willing tomorrow, but I'm not right now. And by the way, that is a perfect 9 response because, and once again, The sloth part of 9 is not that they are like lazy or whatever, and they don't delay. It's like I have to delay it. It's just like, well, I don't feel like doing it right now, but I might feel like doing it tomorrow. So that I might be willing tomorrow, but I'm not willing today is that is the 9's sloth for sure. Okay. So that is that. Journal on this, and where has it shown up in your life? And this gets harder because we don't easily see all of these things. This may be the first time when I've gone through this where you go, no, that doesn't really tie to my type. And I picked specific ones that might be in a blind spot for you. It might be in a shadow for you, because I want that. And we can kind of refer back to that and maybe go back and watch this part of the video and say, is this possible that this is here? Okay. There is something called the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, and this is how it works. So I drive a Lincoln Aviator. That's the car that I drive. I just got it last November. And I don't think I ever even had seen a Lincoln Aviator before I bought one. And now I see them everywhere. They're everywhere. I see them all over the place. Now, another word for, and this is the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. Another word for it is frequency illusion, right? Are there more Lincoln Aviators on the road than there were before? No, but I'm seeing them now, right? I'm seeing them everywhere. Now, I'm saying if that is the way our mind works, and it is, right, then let's use this to catch ourselves in the act. A.H. Almast, in something that I just read the other day, he says our patterns are nearly immortal. So if we think we're going to get rid of our patterns, no, we don't get rid of our patterns. What we do is we recognize them and we gently influence them. That's what we do. So really, when all is said and done, that's what we're going to look at today. But I want you to be a gentle, and this is for everything, a gentle observer of your patterns, a gentle observer, right? That's, and the way that comes out in me is, oh, I'm human. And not only that, I'm a human 8, right? And not only that, I move on levels, right? So be a gentle observer of your patterns, right? It's the only way that we can grow spiritually. It's the only way that we can. Okay. I want to talk for a second about this. So on the left side is a building, on the right side is a view from the 163rd floor of that building. This is called the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. When I was there, I went up the elevator, and that view is just like that. It is so unbelievably beautiful. You are so high, and it is so beautiful. Now, back when I went here, this was the tallest building in the world. I don't know if it still is, but it was then the tallest building in the world. And it smelled like gardenias. It was just like one of the most wonderful experiences of all my travels. I loved it. So the reason that I bring this up is because the vertical stripe in the middle of the building is an elevator. That's the elevator that goes up there. And so I would like for us to think about the levels of recovery, the levels of development that they talk about, as I want you to think of that almost like an elevator that you go up and down, okay? And as we move, and we will move from one level to another as we face the storms of life. So we move up and down if you think of an elevator. And I just saw something the other day where Russ Hudson says it's like at the top, at the very, very top. So the levels go up. At the very, very top, where you see that beautiful view, right, is where the gift of the Spirit is. That's where the virtues are, right? And that's where the holy ideas are when you're up there, level 1. Okay. And when you're down at the very, very bottom, right, that's like completely living in your passions, completely behind that wall that your ego has built. And all of us live somewhere in between. And I really like another thing that I had read, what I really liked, okay, is first of all, this is what he's not talking about the mood that you're in that day. This is talking about the freedom. It's kind of like Magda was talking about earlier, that feeling of freedom. That's not a mood. That is a feeling of freedom. And that comes, by the way, from awareness. When I am aware, oh, okay, I see this pattern, whatever that is. And we'll talk about shadows here in a minute, right? But I really like this metaphor as well, okay? And it is a peg with a rubber band on it. And I read this in the Wisdom of the Enneagram, and I just saw something where Russ Hudson talked about it again. Okay, and just think about wherever we're living, there's a peg that's there, and the rubber band stretches both directions. And so we will move both directions. We can't change that the rubber band will do that because that's called life, right? There's shit happens, I react, whatever, right? What we can change is the peg that we're living in. So that's what spiritual growth looks like. When we first came to program, we might have been even all the way down to level 8, which is obsessive compulsive. We might have been down there, right? And so the rubber band would only stretch up to level 5 and down to 9 or whatever, right? But as I grow through the program and through studying the Enneagram and all the spiritual stuff, what I'm doing is moving the peg. But I don't live in, I'm going to guess that more than likely I am in level 4 right now, but not always, not every minute of my life. Level 4 is where the heart begins to open up. Level 5 is you, and 5 and 6, your heart is pretty closed, but you believe yourself to be healthier than you are, is at least of the stuff that I've read. So level 4 is when your heart really starts to open and you can really, really feel compassion for people that are different types than you are and all that. So I think I pretty much live in level 4. An example I want to use that I just heard Michael Naylor talking about. So Joy and I are driving to a meeting. We're going to go to an OA meeting, and we're driving, and we're talking about, we are talking about the most deep spiritual stuff. Really deep spiritual stuff. She and I are talking about it. I'm thinking we're probably level 3 when we're talking about it, and somebody pulls out in front of me. And I'm immediately like, bad words, guaranteed, right? Right? I'm telling you, I am down at level 6. I don't think level 7 because I'm not flipping people off. I don't do that. I don't want them to see it, but I am mad, right? And that means I've now moved down to level 6. I just absolutely have. I've completely overreacted. I've overcompensated for the fact that this person is a dipshit driver, whatever, right? Now it used to be I would stay angry for hours. And now, right, I just say to Joy, okay, that's one. I get 2 on every trip that we take, right? Anyway, I'm really looking forward to the day when I've moved up to level 3 and my rubber band doesn't stretch down to level 6. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but I'm looking forward to that day. So anyway, hopefully you'll get this idea of this. Just keep in mind, if you're truly feeling compassion, you feel in contact with your body, you're feeling compassion for the other types of people that don't, and we realize that we don't all think like this, you're probably at level 4. That's where you're pegged, right? But you'll go down from that in certain bad behaviors and up from that. So that once again, the rubber band stretches both ways. The work that we do when we do our spiritual work moves the peg, but the rubber band stays there and we move through those levels. Hopefully we just continue to move up as we study. The other thing that in the Michael Naylor interview that I watched, it was just very clear that recovery is slow, right? And it takes a lifetime. But the good news is it's a good lifetime. Okay, so that's it for the levels. I want to talk for a little bit about awareness first. So by awareness, if you think about it, all those ribbons that they have for breast cancer awareness and Alzheimer awareness, it works because that means once you're aware of it, you see it. And now when you see the ribbon, right, you see the ribbons, you go, oh, okay, you understand what that is, right? Because you are aware of it now. And that's what we're trying to do. When I say catch ourselves in the act, we're trying to be aware of when our behaviors are playing out, when in patterns. When that pattern has risen its head and we're acting out in these patterns, that's what we're trying to see. The next step after awareness is acceptance. And with acceptance, I get peace because then that's when I say, oh, I'm human. Okay, all right, I see that. Or how about the acceptance of just, oh, okay, the whole world doesn't view the world the way that I do. There's a different way that they view it. And once I can relax about that, then I can understand their behavior or their perspective or whatever much better than I could when I thought everybody looked at the world the way that I did. But the most important thing of all is that after those two, awareness and acceptance, is when comes action. It's the way the program works. It's the way the Enneagram works. It's the way our lives work. Awareness first, right? And that's that phenomenon I talked about, right? That awareness comes first, and then acceptance, and then obviously action. Now, in step 8 and 9, where the action is to make a list, right, of all the people we've harmed. And then in 9, so that's what we're working on or we're talking about today. And then in step 9, we're going to make amends. We're going to actually make amends, which we'll talk in detail about next week. Now, one of the things that happen when we make our amends is it allows us to release the blame of anything. And also, right, an amends, by the way, that word means to change. So we live differently. right? We basically release all blame and we live differently. That's at least what our goal is. The problem is, each of us, if you think about it, and I'm going to read something from this because this is from the book, The Complete Enneagram by Beatrice Chestnut. It's just a paragraph, but it's an awesome paragraph. So I'm going to read it. Just as light illuminating an object also casts an area of darkness, said Carl Jung, the conscious brightness is how you see yourself. In how you see yourself creates a shadow aspect of personality that goes unseen, like a blind spot. Attributes you think of as bad, feelings of anger, jealousy, hatred, and inferiority, get relegated to your shadow and become unconscious. People who tend to focus on their negative characteristics conversely may hide some of their typical positive feelings or qualities in their shadow, and that is sometimes what fours do. The shadow represents everything we refuse to acknowledge about ourselves that nonetheless impacts the way we behave. Being blind to parts of ourselves means that there is often a difference between the person we think we are, or the person we would like to see ourselves as, and who we really are as we walk through the world. So, I'm going to finish this. We each repress our shadow aspects because they make us feel uncomfortable or bad about ourselves. But making these qualities unconscious gives them the power to create unintended problems in our lives and relationships. So the shadow, all of us have it, and we're going to take a look at what the shadows look like. I'm going to talk about basically what is the shadow, which is what I just did, and then why we want to acknowledge and look at it, right? That we want that awareness of it, and then how do we do that? All right, read the complete Enneagram. Okay. Human beings stand in the rubble of former beliefs. I'm going to give you an example of how this has come up for me very recently, which is one of the reasons I was really excited about this particular week. All of us do stand in the rubble of former beliefs. We can't help it. What makes a real problem is when we start picking up the rubble and try to build a house from it, right? We can't do that. That's not a good idea. But standing in the rubble of former beliefs, I'm going to give an example from me, and I think I'm good time-wise. So when I traveled the world, for about a decade, I traveled the world, and probably the last half of that decade, I had really bad knees, bone on bone, very, very painful. Specifically, I remember going through the Frankfurt airport. I thought I was going to die. The Chicago O'Hare was a killer. Don't even let me talk about London Heathrow. Oh my God, huge, huge airports. And I would walk through the airport. Of course, I couldn't admit vulnerability, so I would not ride a wheelchair. Forget about that. So I walked through these airports, extremely painful. Okay, five or so years ago, I had my knees replaced, and so I had knee replacement surgery. So I don't even have real knees. They cannot hurt, and the muscles around them do not hurt. But I still fear. I'll use the word fear. I still fear the pain of my knees, and it keeps me from taking daily walks. I am standing in the rubble of former beliefs. Absolutely. This is a perfect example of that, right? And it's like, and what's coming up for me lately, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, is this whole idea that I'm a body type who will not inhabit my body. I refuse to. And this is coming up for me now, like not 5 years ago, 5 months ago, now, as I'm studying this Enneagram stuff, this is the stuff that's coming up for me. And I'm like, wow, right? So anyway, I think that's just amazing. So, okay, that's good. If I stand in the rubble of former beliefs, then, right, can't I just release those beliefs? Well, here's one of the problems. Everything I've ever released has claw marks on it, right? I mean, he's like, release? Okay, this is what I've learned, at least in my life. If I am going, if there's something that is in my life that I do not want in my life, when I release that, it leaves an opening, and that's a vacuum. Nature abhors the vacuum. Something has to fill that. Something must fill that, or I go back to my old behaviors. I have to replace that with something else. I'm still working on what in this particular example that I'm talking about, but I'm telling you, it is really difficult. Now, what makes it difficult for each of us in our types to release that stuff is the fact that we back to that ego structure, right? When we were children, right, we built up this ego structure to defend us, and we believed that that is us. And now that that is gone, right, then and it's going to make us uncomfortable. It just does, right? Absolutely. So I'm going to give you a couple of things to help you recognize when that kind of thing is happening, where I've released something, but I haven't put something in its place, kind of. Okay. So once again, the shadow is the unrecognized or disowned side of ourselves. And all of us have this, right? It's in our shadow. The first way is if you spot it, you got it. And that's good and bad, right? It's the good things. Like if somebody who is kind will notice kindness in other people. And I'm a kind person, so I will notice when somebody has treated a waitress really, really well or badly, right? I notice that, okay? And your reactions are 100% about you, not about anybody else. So if you spot it, you got it. And one of the things that I do like about this book that we've been reading is she talks about using percentages. So if I notice something, I can go, oh, I noticed that. People around me might not have noticed it, but I noticed it, and I noticed it, which probably means I got it. What percentage of the time might I be like that? It might be 1%, right? It might be when I was young, 50% of the time I was like that. Now I'm like 0.5% of the time. That's fine. But if you spot it, you got it, which means I want to journal about it and say, okay, why did I notice that? Is there a reason? Is that in my shadow? Right? And so much of this is just that inquiry that we talked about. Okay. This is a quote from May 26th, I think, which is that today? It might even be today's for today. This happens to be the one that I really love. The lust for comfort, that stealthy thing that enters the house a guest, becomes a host and then a master. In past years, not so much now, I hope, but in past years, I believed that if I was uncomfortable, it was really, really, really bad. So comfort had become my master. And physical comfort, like when I traveled, I insisted on staying in American style hotels because the beds are comfortable, the showers are big, right? Whatever. Okay. But also emotional discomfort, any kind of discomfort at all. And I thought there was something wrong with the capital W, wrong, just completely wrong. And it's, guess what? Life includes discomfort. And as a matter of fact, discomfort is how I grow. That's how I grow. So this idea that, right, this lust for comfort, this need to have comfort, that has to go away. That has to go away. And I'm realizing that now more than ever because I'm doing the shadow work that says that belief is in that shadow. Because now here's what it isn't that I didn't know I needed comfort. I knew that. I just didn't know that it had become my master because it was in my shadow. That was a shadow thing that's like, oh, right? There's other people that they don't need comfort, right? These people that go camping, that's not my deal, right? Because bugs, no, thank you. Just on the ground, no, thank you. I mean, makes sense. Okay, so anyway, the idea, this lust for comfort. So to me, that's a big one. And so you're going to be looking at your shadow, and I'm going to give you some ideas on how to do that. But you're going to be looking at your shadow also, right? And yours might also be avoiding discomfort. And I saw something this morning that talked about, discomfort is a fact of life. And actually, Ellen Berger in Emotional Sobriety talks about that, right? That not exactly these words, but the idea that we think that if I am uncomfortable, emotionally uncomfortable, that there's something wrong. And that's not true at all. Okay. This is misquoted, but it's close enough. We cannot solve, I like the slide, so I took it. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that we used when we create them. This, by the way, is why we have community. We have to have community because you cannot look at the stuff yourself. You will never see your own. Joy and I were talking the other day because I said, hey, wasn't there just like a month ago, I was saying, well, I'm not like that. And Joy, she's lovely and loving. And she said, you might want to take a look at that. And we laughed, right? I'm like, yeah, maybe I do need to take a look at that. I don't remember what it was. I did take a look at it. So, and that's why we need community, right? People that lovingly can basically hold a mirror up and not judge us for it. Just hold the mirror up and say, you might want to look at that. I felt very loved in that moment. Okay. So why does each type repress its shadow? And I think the shadow is absolutely tied to the basic fear. I haven't seen this in any books that say this specifically, but I think it is tied to that. So that's the reason that I'm covering it this way. Okay, so the basic fear, and I'm just going to talk about the basic fear of the one, and then I'm going to talk about what I think are some of the shadows that you might look at if you're a one. So the basic fear of the one is being defective. And once again, they don't just, they fear that they are defective, right? Okay. So the shadow is, it is safer for them to condemn outwardly than to admit that they condemn themselves inwardly. So they will be very picky about other things. They're the ones that during OA meetings will talk about how their traditions aren't being upheld and that kind of stuff. It's just safer to condemn outward, and that keeps them from have the need to condemn inwardly, which is basically their main fear, is that they're defective, right? Okay. So for the two, they have a fear of being unloved, and their shadow, and this is, once again, this is pretty much before you admit it, and there still may be part of it, but before you learn these things about yourself. So for the two, really feels like they must never be needy. They will supply needs, but they must never be needy. And the ultimate irony is usually that behavior is what makes them needy, right? And maybe that's true in all of these, right? It's entirely possible that it is. For the three, their fear is that they have no value beyond their accomplishments. So their accomplishing is super important for them because they feel like they fear that they have no value beyond that. And their shadow is that they will wear a success mask and don't even realize that they're wearing it. That's their shadow. The fear of the four is being insignificant, right? They're afraid that they're insignificant in this world. And the shadow, and this is the one where they will be bad, or they will be melancholy, or there will be something like that, because nice is too normal, right? These are also in the shadow. There is a lot of times melancholy will cover envy, because melancholy is sexier or something than envy is, because envy is, we're taught, being envious is bad anyway. But for the four, nice is too normal. So, and that may be in their shadow. For the five, their fear is being helpless, and their shadow is that they really feel like their mind and their learning and their knowledge and can control the situation, can control all situations in some cases. And this is, by the way, the kind of stuff that when you're like in average or unhealthy, it really shows up. Not so much once you work the program, because many of us are at level 4, right? And I don't know how much higher. That's not my business, but anyway, so something to think about. Okay, for 6, their fear is being able to survive on their own, and then in their shadow is, what if they leave me? What if I am left alone? If I call it out or whatever. Okay, and then for the 7, being trapped in pain, they'd rather joke about it. These are the ones. If you've been at a meeting and like we're right at where somebody is having a breakthrough and it's very emotional and there's all this stuff, the 7 will joke. Not all the time. Sometimes the 7 will throw a joke out there to kind of lighten the mood, because they want the mood to be lightened. Anyway, so that's the 7. And once again, that's in the shadow. They don't see that as something that is, I mean, I'm not even saying it's a bad thing, but they don't see it that way at all. To them, that kind of saved the day, if that makes sense. That's in their shadow. For the 8, being controlled, and the fear, and basically the shadow is, I will only give certain people the upper hand. I actually say that I will not follow anyone's directions, including my own. So it's a hard life. What can I say? Okay, and for the 9, their fears of being destroyed, or at least being like they don't matter. And then they will ask the question, right? Basically, the shadow for them is, what if they hate me? What if I say something to them, if I do conflict, what if in the end they hate me and abandon me, whatever. Okay. So I'm going to ask, they should give you two questions to ask or to work on, and then also a suggestion. So the first question is to journal on this. I am not, and then you fill in the blank. And what this says is, I would say, I'm not, and this is almost like from the perspective, I'm not bitchy. And it's like, well, right? I would say that. well, I'm not bitchy, right? Yeah. So I'm not, and then journal on that. And actually, then it comes in the percentage. What percentage of the time? Okay, so I would say I'm not that. That's like, it used to be like 48% of the time I was, right? And now it's maybe 2% of the time. Okay. The next one is my brat inside believes that I get to blank because of blank. I get to sleep in because I worked for 50 years. I get to gamble because it relaxes me. I get to, whatever that is, whatever it is, I get to eat sugar because I need energy. Okay. And once again, these are things that are in your shadow if you have not addressed them. Working a program, you probably have addressed many of them, but all of us have a shadow and all of us have shadow work. Okay. So let me share with you what I am doing, my suggestion, what I am doing to work on this. The sevens mantra is staying present is my holy work. And then there's a couple of others that don't use the word holy work, but the idea is the same, that there's something that at whatever type I am that I have to work on. And so I woke up one morning and that kind of half asleep, half awake is when my subconscious is open and my higher power can actually like reach me and I don't have all the walls up. And this is what I heard: make it holy work, because I am a body type unconnected from my body. But what if I make it holy work? What if the physical part, because I've worked a really strong spiritual program, a really strong emotional program, and the physical is kind of off to the side, right? And so, and that includes food, includes working out, includes all the things that everybody considers healthy. And it's absolutely in my shadow, right? I mean, that's like, I'm good the way I am. I'm fine. I don't take walks every day. Now I know why, right? I've been working on it. Okay. So what if I make it holy work? If I can say that working out or walking, taking a walk every day or whatever is my holy work, right? That's what my higher power is telling me right now. My holy work is that. It has to be part of it. It has to be. And that fills in what I've removed, right? So to me, this is, if for no other reason, this is why I'm teaching this class. This is why my higher power had me teach this class, because I understand this is my holy work. So anyway, I'm really happy about that. So that's the shadow stuff. Okay. Don't forget office hours, Tuesday and Wednesday, 8 a.m. Pacific, and also Wednesday afternoon, 5 p.m. Pacific, same meeting and number and so forth as this. All right, for session 9, memorize your mantra, do the session 8 weekly challenge, and then, which I'm going to cover here in a minute. And then in prep for session 9, identify some shadows that you may have, because next session we're going to be talking about how to own it.
Thanks for recovering with us at Surrender School.